What does it mean to release my video order here? Does anybody have that on there?
Yeah, I see that too.
Does anybody know what that means?
I have never seen it. Okay. It's 5 o'clock. Green light. Council, I will call the May 20th, 2021 regular city council meeting to order for the Des Moines City Council. And at this time, I will ask Councilmember Martinelli to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please let the record show that all council members are present. Is there any correspondence from the public?
Mayor, we've received the following written public comments. Stephanie Awida Ponce, chickens. Michelle Rouse, chickens in Des Moines, yay. Ken Lancer, chicken keeping. Megan Schloer and Caleb Heinrichs, support proposed to alter law for chickens. Dennis Dole, improving Des Moines by correcting a foul law. Keith Ball, chickens. Mary Schuster, chickens in Des Moines. Sandra Mock, public comment time. Tina Nelson, aircraft noise over Des Moines. Greg Handmaker, speed control on 242nd Street. Christopher Yanez, dog park, and Joe Schott, adaptive use building. And that concludes all the written public comments. We have 2 who signed up for verbal public comment, Mayor. And for is Bill Linscott.
Okay, Mr. Linscott, you will be unmuted and you will have 3 minutes in which to speak.
Hey, thank you very much. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, City Manager, and staff. I appreciate a chance to make a few comments and maybe some suggestions on marina development. And I do this as merely a resident. Patty and I, not any associations or groups we're connected with. So we're just speaking as residents tonight. From the discussion at the last council meeting, 2 things kind of resonated with us. The first was kind of speed. In other words, the speed in which the city's moving to finalize a marina master plan. And I think the city and the community have been engaged in this activity for some time, trying to get the actual plan developed, get some approval of it, some money wrapped around it, and some motivated, interested parties to help with this. And there's been some great work done, minus the 2020 COVID year. And we see the need for a convergence at this time and in short order. And I think it really can be done. And I think the city and the community needs to work toward that. It's about getting the plan completed and remembering that it's a multi-year plan and project, and there will be changes along the way. But certainly we're supportive of moving ahead with that with as much speed as we can hang on to. And that goes for both the water side and the land side. Now, the second thing that we heard was an informed community. Like, do we have an informed community? And here I think we may have a little bit of a mixed opinion, but I wanted to share some thoughts on this. On the water side, the water side's coming up to speed very rapidly. And I have to say, much of that is due to just the outstanding work that Dan Brewer and Scott and Katie have done, reaching out and getting engaged and the dialogue going, getting information out and available where people can readily get to it, and seeking, promoting questions and comment, and then responding to it quickly. And the other thing that they're doing is they're looking at kind of the terminology and the definitions of terms we use as we talk about different things. And that it can, surprisingly can be rather confusing. And so the ability to get clarity around the conversation helps with the understanding. And I feel like they've done that in a matter of months, actually, you know, from the time Mark Bunzel dropped a bit of a straw horse as to what he thought should be proposed to where we're at now. It's pretty impressive. So there's a demonstration of moving with speed in the engagement process with the community. So on the land side, they've been committed to a very conscientious engagement with the community. And I think there we may have a few gaps that can be closed, but and those gaps I feel like are in kind of the timing of things and when they occurred and the information as it rolls in. But you know, if you look at the work done with the Argosy boats and at the yacht club back in 2017, those were great engagements, and the public had an opportunity for an expression of the things that they wanted to see down there. And what was shown there were some illustrations of what could be some tentative locations of things. It was all somewhat general in nature, but that's the way it should have been at that point in time. Now,
you've exceeded your time. I need you to wrap up your thoughts, please.
So the bottom line here is I think we can close the gaps on the land side and get the public moving at a faster pace. And I would encourage that you move with the model that the water side has, get the information out there, hold a couple of meetings, and encourage the questions and answers. And I think both sides can move forward and we can get this thing done. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
The next person is Rosie Heffernan. Your mic is muted. We will unmute your mic. There you go.
I'm unmuted. Hi. Hopefully I won't need 3 minutes. So I'm following up on an email that I sent the city council a while ago, proposal to do an amendment change to the animal keeping code to allow chickens on lots smaller than 22,000 square feet. Right now, the animal keeping code allows for several dogs, several cats, several pigs, several rabbits, and no fowl of any kind below 22,000 square feet. I've done some research, and in our surrounding neighborhoods, Seattle allows up to 8 fowl on any size lot, plus 1 for every additional 10,000 square feet. Burien allows 3. In 2018, Kent changed their law. Unanimous city council voted to allow up to 6 on small lots. Renton allows 3 per 6,000 square feet, and Federal Way allows 4 hens or ducks on lots smaller than 35,000 square feet. When I looked it up, I saw that 22,000 square feet seemed incredibly restrictive for the average homeowner's lot size here. I myself live on a lot of about 10,000 square feet, and I don't think that the large lot size is reflective of how much space chickens need to be happy and also to not annoy neighbors, considering that chickens at their loudest are no louder than someone talking. So probably not going to be annoying the neighbors. My husband and I really would like to keep chickens, and I know that a lot of our friends and neighbors already do, but I don't believe in bringing an animal onto my lot that could be taken away. It's irresponsible, and I just would rather it be a welcome addition to the neighborhood, since I think that they're a fantastic addition to a home, both in animal husbandry purposes, sustainability, composting, and are just generally very nice animals to have around. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any more public comment? Okay, since there are no more, that will take us forward to the city manager's report. City Manager Matthias, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This is one of the most pleasurable meetings for me every year, because I always get to say, better the judge, we appear before the judge from the dais than when the judge in the dais and we're reporting to court. So one of the things, I'm sorry, Lisa. But one of the things always a pleasure is we're going to have a state of the court address by our judge, Lisa Leone. And I see different members of the court are here. And I just want to tell you that something that really works well at City Hall that we should all be proud of. And it's that, you know, our court, our public defenders, our prosecutors, our attorney, our police department, SCORE jail, all work together to do some very incredible things. And they've been challenged, especially by COVID. And I think one of the things that's so enjoyable about working with the judge is that she and I both have a great respect for the distinction in the branches of government, i.e., I pretty much leave her alone and vice versa. And we usually give her whatever money she wants, trying to avoid appearing before her. So I just want to say it's a pleasure every year that her contract is renewed. I'm proud of our efforts in law enforcement. We have some very capable people that work in our court. And just a couple of examples: Jennifer Johnson, our court administrator, was court administrator of the year not long ago. Melissa Patrick, our chief parole officer, was also a parole officer of the year in the state of Washington. So these are some exceptional people, all guided by Judge Lisa. And with that, Judge, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I certainly appreciate it. And now I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully this will work. All right. So we'll start at the top. And thank you again, City Manager Mathias, and thank you to all the council members. I welcome the opportunity each year to share with you the work of the court. And I start, as I always do every year, with our mission statement. This is especially compelling this year, given all the challenges that we've had throughout 2020 and even continuing to today. And I'm proud to say that despite unprecedented challenges, we successfully maintained and even improved upon court operations in 2020. I have, as City Manager Mathias pointed out, incredible staff and intrepid staff to thank for that. But I also wanted to recognize the efforts of our prosecuting attorney, Ms. Tara Vaughn, and our public defenders who came in midstream in the middle of all this, Stuart McNichols and Hermel. Their cooperation and professionalism really allowed the court to seamlessly move towards virtual court proceedings and keep things moving along. In terms of numbers, and this includes civil and criminal cases, there were 18,230 cases filed, and hearings held 5,557. Most of those by Zoom, and I can tell you, for all the parties involved, that represents a lot of time on Zoom for us. In terms of how we got there, in April or May of last year, we were beginning to pilot our virtual courtroom. By June, we were 100% virtual. And now, less than a year later, we are able to hold in-person jury trials, and we are moving towards more of a hybrid model where if we need to transport individuals from jail to court, we can do that. And going forward, the virtual option will become permanent. The feedback that we've received from attorneys, defendants, and other court users has been uniformly positive. We've reduced wait times, eliminated transportation costs, childcare, or job interruption issues that challenge many defendants when coming to court in person. Similarly, victims seeking a modification of a domestic violence no contact order were able to email the court with their request and also appear virtually for their hearings. And there's no doubt that the availability of remote proceedings has increased access to justice for many within our community. And as such, the court intends to permanently maintain it as an option for most types of hearings. So 2020 really brought a sea change to court operations. We demanded more of our staff. Their jobs changed and became more complicated. The court implemented new policies and procedures that will endure beyond the pandemic. And I'm really proud of this point. In a first, we were able to conduct court with every single staff member off-site. And this was useful not only during certain periods in the pandemic, but we are prepared to keep the court going should any other emergency occur in the future. We have it down. Nobody would have been able to tell that we weren't operating from the courthouse. We also expanded availability of adjudication by mail or email for civil infractions, permitted informal e-filing of documents by email or Dropbox, virtual check-in for defendants and jurors, and also jury selection by Zoom. The speedy implementation of these procedures allowed the court to continue to fulfill its constitutional and statutory duties throughout the pandemic. Now, of course, alongside the continuing public health crisis, in 2020, we also witnessed what our state Supreme Court Chief Justice Stephen Gonzalez has called a racial reckoning in this country. And the Chief Justice has directed the judicial branch to take concrete steps to assess and revise policies and procedures to eradicate racism within our judicial system. Although a statewide judicial work group is charged with making recommendations and tracking statewide efforts moving forward, we have started this work in our own court. For example, continuing the use of remote court proceedings, using live video access for the general public to access court hearings, expanding remote court interpreting, expanding support services, which we formerly called probation, and also forging new partnerships with other stakeholders and neighboring courts. All of these measures are intended to increase access to justice, expand alternatives to confinement, and reduce the jail population, while at the same time providing the accountability necessary to protect public safety and deter reoffense. In addition, within the court, every member of our staff participated in a workshop sponsored by the Washington State Minority and Justice Commission. The workshop was a starting point to begin the essential and necessary work of eliminating systemic and institutional racism and continuing the dialogue between and among those who work within the court system. Now, despite all of the successes we've had in 2020, there are going to be challenges moving forward. There's a backlog of cases that need to be filed and/or resolved. There are, of course, continuing public health concerns that will need to be addressed, additional technology training of staff members, as well as ongoing procedural changes at the state level as a result of all these pandemic-related issues. Most recently, the legislature passed Senate Bill 5476, which the governor signed this month. And as you probably all know, that bill reclassifies criminal possession of narcotics and other illegal substances as misdemeanors rather than felony offenses, and mandates diversion for first-time offenders. Though laudable, the practical effect of this legislation is to shift responsibility of adjudicating these offenses from Superior Court to municipal and district courts. As a result, this bill will increase the court's caseload and require the development of a pre- and a post-filing diversion program, the specifics of which have yet to be fully defined or developed. Also this month, the King County Prosecutor's Office announced changing to its filing standards in response to calls for reform. As a result, a number of property offenses previously filed as felonies will be referred back to municipal and district court for filing and adjudication as gross misdemeanors. While these reform measures are commendable, the impacts to our court will be substantial. And the court is working with the city manager to ensure that we have the staff and the resources available to meet these challenges. I really do appreciate the city manager's understanding of the separation of powers, but I also appreciate the very positive working relationship that we have with one another. I also appreciate the council's ongoing interest and support of the court. I've always believed that there are issues of common interest across all three branches that we can work together to address. And two examples are on the agenda tonight. I understand there's going to be a presentation regarding homelessness, and there's also the city's proclamation declaring May Mental Health Awareness Month. These are two issues that directly impact the work of the court, and I'm always interested to see how we might partner to address these issues in a way that benefits our community. Now, in terms of additional enduring changes in court operations, our clerk office is moving to an entirely remote platform. We will offer the same level of customer service and availability, but it will be in a different format, and frankly, a format that should be much easier for those who are at home and wish to contact the clerk's office, be easier for them as well. We've moved to an online jury summons and management program. We're prepared to do remote jury selection by Zoom. The nice thing about that is that it's safe for everyone involved. It's convenient. It's optional in the sense that if someone does not have the technical capacity to access Zoom, but they want to serve on the jury, we can bring them into court and accommodate that and still include them. And it's transparent because all of our proceedings are broadcast so that everyone outside the court can see what is going on. We also have language assistance measures that allow interpreters to appear remotely with defendants who may be in the courtroom or themselves appearing remotely. I also wanted to highlight some of the court programs that either have continued or were initiated during 2020. This includes our biweekly calendar of legal financial obligations that allows individuals who owe money to write a letter to the judge and ask to be put on a payment plan, or ask that their obligations perhaps be converted to community service hours. We also have what's called the UP program, and that allows individuals with fines owing across several courts to make one payment instead of having to go court to court to court. We also have our Back on Track program, which is currently in operation, and that is a countywide effort to get folks with outstanding bench warrants back into court so that we can resolve their cases. And as always, we have our sex trafficking fund, which is paid out of the patronizing a prostitute account. So defendants are the ones who have a mandatory assessment if they're convicted of that offense. And we work with Genesis Project to determine what their needs are and donate items to support that program. Now, one major shift in terms of our operations is we're moving away from a probation model, and we are adopting a support services model of supervision for defendants. On this slide, you can see Ms. Patrick's considerable caseload, and you can see the total number of defendants that are under some form of supervision, and then we have the breakdown there. Now, in terms of expanding support services, the council approved an agreement so that we now are able to offer on-site hookup for electronic monitoring, which would include GPS, alcohol and/or electronic home detention. We've expanded our drug testing program. We will soon have on-site and virtual domestic violence moral recognition therapy program available to defendants. We had to put that on the back burner during COVID, but that will be starting back up again with the virtual option. Ms. Patrick has been meeting virtually with defendants, which has worked out well. She's reported that she's had a higher rate of appearance for those probation appointments as a result of being available remotely. And we also have client text message reminders to keep them on track. So the objective here is to meaningfully address the underlying causes of racism, whether substance abuse, mental health issues, or unemployment, by connecting the defendant with appropriate treatment and social service providers. At the same time, by expanding our drug testing and electronic monitoring programs, support services will continue to provide the accountability required to ensure defendants are complying with court-ordered conditions. And this is something that I'm really excited about. Tukwila Municipal Court is in the process of launching its Court Connection Center. And we had a meeting last week, and our defendants who are in need of services will be able to access the Court Connection Center in Tukwila. And they provide not only clothing, food, and hygiene items, but there's also treatment providers, benefits assistants, VA navigators, driver's license specialists, everything you can see on the slide. We would love to be able to offer that here in Des Moines. The fact of the matter is we do not have the physical space. We have always had a court resource center. It's just been on a much smaller scale. And once that is fully operational, Ms. Patrick will probably be over there staffing some of those hours as well, serving our clients over there. So this is a wonderful example of leveraging partnerships. Tukwila Municipal Court, Des Moines Municipal Court, we share defendants. It makes a lot of sense to engage in this sort of partnership. And finally, I wanted to address our DUI court. I really am so proud of our entire DUI court team. They've remained completely committed and cohesive throughout this pandemic. We have assisted and held accountable all of our DUI court participants, even though all of our hearings have been held virtually. I'm proud to say we've tripled the number of participants in DUI court since 2019. We're currently at capacity. The program is funded largely through a grant from Washington Traffic Safety Commission. And most importantly, to date, there is 0% recidivism among our DUI court participants, all of whom have at least 3 prior DUI convictions. I know we're all proud of that. And, you know, the team supports the work of the participants. So it's really the hard work that they've done to continue on in the program. We look forward to our first formal graduation ceremony sometime in September. And we do hope that members of the council and the city manager and Chief Thomas will attend that. That's going to be certainly a cause for celebration. And I do want to thank the chief for his ongoing support of the DUI court program. Justin Kripe is our DUI court member, and he is an important member of our team as well. So really, it's a team effort, and we all feel really good about where we've been and where we're going with our DUI court. So that concludes my presentation, and I certainly welcome any questions that any of you may have. Yes.
I see Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and I see Councilmember Harris, and then I see Councilmember Bangs. So we will start with Deputy Mayor Mahoney, go to Harris, and then Bangs.
Great job, Judge, for you and your team. Quick question, a couple quick questions. So 5,755 hearings. I was doing my math. That's more than 200 a day in work days. That's got to be insane.
Well, that also includes the adjudication by mail. So
Okay,
those are
adjudication by
done
mail.
in separate blocks.
Okay, that I was going to say that makes a little more sense.
Yeah,
The
it's
other one is-
not all of them are, yes, not all of them are face-to-face hearings. We have a number of our
Okay.
civil infractions and camera tickets that are by mail.
Yeah, I was doing the math, and it was good. It was like speed judging or something. It was equivalent as I saw it. So thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard it sounded like at the county level, they were taking felonies and dropping them down to misdemeanors and then shipping them to the local jurisdiction, the cities, for adjudication. Is that correct?
Yes, and so how that works procedurally is, let's say there is a Des Moines Police Department report of a theft that they would ordinarily refer, due to the amount of loss incurred, they would refer it to the King County Prosecutor's Office for a filing decision. So what happens is now they'll look at it and they'll say, well, yes, we know that to be a felony, it requires $750 worth of loss, but if it is now less than $2,000, we're going to kick it back down to municipal court. Excuse me.
And I suspect no additional funding was provided to the cities for that.
Correct.
Okay.
So that, and also the, excuse me, with the felony drug possessions now being misdemeanors, that also is, there is some money for that, but it is very limited compared to the amount of money that goes to King County Superior Court for their drug court program, for example. So I would say definitely this is an example of a fairly unfunded mandate. One of the, and Chief Thomas, I'm sure could speak to this as well, but one of the requirements of the statute is that for first offense, that they are diverted directly into treatment. So they don't even come into my court. But the statute beyond that goes on and basically says that once they come into court, you still need to try to divert them into treatment. So I anticipate that we will have a meeting with the chief of police and the defenders and Ms. Vaughn and sit down and figure out what this diversion means. Again, it's laudable. You're trying to connect people with services, but how do you do it procedurally? What resources will it take? And and what is the price tag? Because there is a cost to all of this.
Yeah, I would add manpower. The last question I had was, if you were to choose a percentage of increase to your caseload, would you have one at this point?
I don't have one exactly at this point. I know that we're looking into that, and I'm also reaching out to other courts, because all of the local municipal courts, especially the single judge courts, are panicking a little bit, just because we want to make sure that we have everything in place, the wherewithal to deal with these cases. So we are continuing to explore what this all means. The drug possession statute was passed on an emergency basis, which means that it's in effect currently. And the filing and disposition standards, that's a procedural call at the King County Prosecutor's Office, but that was revised as of April, I believe. So that is in effect now, as far as I know. So yeah, I think we will start to see the effects of this fairly soon.
Well, I'll be interested in the ways we can support you. Good luck
Thank
with
you.
that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. This is wonderful stuff, Judge. I just, do you have some kind of, this is a really like a sea change in systemic, okay? And so not in terms of dollars, but just how will you increase capacity process-wise? Is it simply we give more money to Tukwila and they have the capacity, or do we have to build a new model? Okay, because I mean, you're talking about a lot of opportunities. Does it reach a point where we need more than one judge? I know I'm asking really broad questions, but
no, those are all great questions, actually. And yes, I mean, I think we will require more staff. Once we get a handle on how many cases we're talking about, then I'll have better, answer to your questions. I think that we are at the point where, especially with the diversions, I think, we will try by expanding support services. That's going to be a big piece of that. And so as I said, we are working with the city manager on adding an additional support person in order to handle sort of the influx that we expect. So, this is an ongoing conversation that we're having, and I felt it was really important to make the council aware of everything that's going on, and we will continue to monitor things closely, and we will let you know. But we have tried to always stay ahead of things, and we've done so successfully. It's just that these couple of things came up pretty quickly. So we're doing a little bit of triage right now, and once we gather more information, meet with stakeholders, we should have more answers to your question.
Okay, no, I figured out what I wanted to ask you. But we know what needs to happen. We just need to provide the people or the money to more slots for the DUI program, for example. We know how to do that. We just need more slots. Is that
right?
Thing?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very, very, very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilmember Banks.
Well, considering I'm third on the list, they've asked all the questions I had. So thank you for answering. But I will say this, there is the one question I want, but before I have the question, I want to thank you, Judge Jennifer and Melissa, on how well prepared you always are when you come to speak before council. You have the detail, but you don't have it to the point where we're glazed over, but we are able to really assess and digest it and then ask you the questions, you know, as you saw from our Deputy Mayor and Councilmember Harris. I mean, there were great questions just because of how well prepared you were, but then we're really curious about what's going on, and we just never know what the heck's going on the level above. And so, you know, I appreciate it. Unfortunately, there's a domino effect related to costs, but you know, you'll let us know what that is, and I know we'll support you. So with that, here's my question. Court Connection Center, is there any plans for you to come forward to talk about how Des Moines can have their own? Because we're constantly finding resources, but they're always outside the city. And we've got to be able to have inside the city resources available, whether it's a center, and I know we have resources, but I'm just saying our own center at some point in time. May not be 2022, but certainly I would hope that there's something planned for the future to come forward to talk to us about having our own resources.
Yeah, I would love to be able to do that. It's a function of, is that coming from me? It's a function of space and space and staff, less staff, and I would say more a space constraint, because I know that Tuckwiller reached out to the various agencies in order for them to have representatives come in. So, you know, that's something that we could do, and we've wanted to do, but it's, again, just having the space constraints, we haven't been able to do that.
Right.
So yes, I am open to that, whether it is something that is part of the court or something that is, you know, that is driven by another department in the city. I'm more than happy to be involved in that. And I know Ms. Patrick and Ms. Johnson and I have talked about that. So yeah, we are open to it.
Great, thank you very much.
Councilmember Banks, if I might also add, and the judge and I have talked briefly about this, but there may be some models out there that could be utilized for both PD and the courts in the manner in which people are find resources and who that's applicable to. And we're looking at some of the COVID money right now, and we'll come back to council with some ideas potentially about how to do that. So that may be part, not an entire, but part of a solution, just so you know there's something in the works.
Great, thank you, City Manager.
And I would encourage all of you, if you're interested, to tune into our YouTube channel to watch some of the court proceedings. I think it's really interesting, and I think you would find it interesting as well, at least for the first 5 minutes. But it's, you know, it's your court, it's our community's court, and I always encourage people to come and see what it is we do every day. So thank you, City Manager Matthias, for giving me this time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, anything?
Just, I'll yield to Councilmember Martinelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief comment. I just want to echo Councilmember Bang's comments and thank you, Judge, for the presentation. And in particular, I want to thank you and your team for the work you're doing on the DUI court. The results have been incredible so far, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Councilmember Harris, you're muted, please.
Thanks. Could we put the YouTube channel for the court in the council packet or someplace, you know, just as part of it?
We can send it. We can send it to you. It's on our court website. The link is on our court website, but we can send you the link.
Thank you.
Judge Leon, all I'll say is that I had the privilege of working with your predecessor, and I thought she was amazing. And when you came in, I knew you had big shoes to fill, and you have done an outstandingly wonderful job. Now, you did have Jennifer with you and so forth, but I mean, you and your team and Melissa, I mean, you guys just rock it. And all I can say is thank you. I am very, very appreciative, as I know everyone else is. And our community, I believe, is as well. They don't get to see the work you do, but you guys make a significant difference to the quality of this community. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. On behalf of all of our staff, thank you.
Judge, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on. We're gonna have another brief presentation, but to bring council up to date with the South King Housing and Homelessness Partners Group, and this is a regional coalition. The city contributes a portion of sales tax to this for resources for the homeless and for affordable housing. And I want to, first of all, just acknowledge Councilmember Bangs has been very involved in this, and is the city's representative on the board over there. Nicole Nordham, who will introduce Angela in a second, has been involved with that process, as has Eric Lane. So with that, Nicole, why don't I let you take it away?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nicole Nordholm, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services. And just to quickly echo Michael, Des Moines is a member of the South King Housing and Homeless Partners, or SKIP. This was established through an interlocal agreement, and the idea is to work together and share resources to increase available options for South King County residents to access affordable housing. Like Michael mentioned, Councilmember Bangs was initially our executive board member, and now Councilmember Buxton has taken that role, and both are incredibly dedicated to this group and the work that is being done. So with that, I will introduce Angela Sanfilippo, who is the SKIP Executive Manager, and she just has a brief presentation to give. So Angela.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Good evening, council members and mayor. Thank you so much for having me. I am going to share my screen here with a brief presentation. So give me just one moment. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, thank you again for having me. Really, the intention tonight is to provide a little bit of an overview of the work that we've been doing, to give you a progress update. Always good to meet all of you. I wish we could be here in person at some point. Hopefully that will happen. And in addition to the progress update, I wanted to touch base while we are in the development of our 2022 work plan and budget. And get some feedback from you all to make sure that we are incorporating any suggestions or ideas you have in the direction that we're headed for the following 2022 budget planning and work plan. So the first thing I wanted to just go over is our SKIP mission. So we are 10 South King County jurisdictions working together and pooling resources to create a coordinated and comprehensive approach to increasing housing stability and producing and preserving quality affordable housing in South King County. So the intention of this mission statement is to be very concise and specific while also conveying our purpose and values. Our objectives as an organization are really whittled down to just three things here at a high level: sharing technical information and resources across South King County jurisdictions to promote sound housing policy in relation both to land use as well as on the tenant protection and anti-displacement side. Secondly, coordinating public resources with the intention of attracting greater investment into affordable housing in South King County. And then the third one is providing a unified voice for our subregion to advocate for South King County needs at a local, regional, as well as at a state level. So thinking about South King County and really providing opportunity for advocacy, as well as to tell the story of South King County and what our needs and opportunities are. Wanted to go through some reoccurring work items. So these are things that you will continue to see on our work plans. So our work plan itself is split into three key areas. The first being our governance and administration. This includes our work plan and budget process, quarterly progress reports, as well as providing annual updates to our stakeholder groups and non-SCIP partner cities, as well as our partners. Policy and planning, this includes building funding support, which I will get into a little bit later and talk in a little bit more detail. Also supporting policies and strategies across our partnership that address, as I said, displacement, fair housing, healthy housing, as well as land use policies. And then also supporting housing policies and strategies that embed and track racial equity. So including those in our housing related goals as well. And then lastly, we have a big body of work around outreach and education. This includes representing SCIP at local and regional meetings and forums, as well as providing educational topics to our SCIP executive board at our monthly meetings, and then providing broader education and engagement opportunities for elected officials, stakeholders, and community members across the region. Each year, we also adopt state and federal legislative priorities, specifically those that focus on SCIP's overall mission and goals. And then lastly here, we also convene and just started convening this year, the South King County Joint Planners and Developers Work Group. This was previously convened by the Housing Development Consortium and provides space for local jurisdiction staff, both human services as well as land use planning staff, to coordinate with affordable housing developers. A little bit of our work plan in review. We've got a couple areas of ongoing focus. The first one being to establish a SCIP advisory board. Our advisory board will be made up of 12 to 15 community members that really represent the broader sub-region in some specific areas of expertise, but also representative of the diverse populations across South King County. And the intention there is to really ground the executive board's decisions and recommendations in the community's interests and needs as identified by that advisory group. So we're excited that our application process just opened last week, and we hope to have that advisory board established later this summer. We also are currently working through developing an administrative plan and structure for our SCIP Housing Capital Fund. So very excited to move this body of work forward through pooled sales tax credit funds from all of our SCIP partners. And that is the first opportunity that South King County has had to have a regional capital fund that will really infuse dollars into South King County's affordable housing stock. Additionally, we are building funding support for that capital fund by establishing a 501c3. So this is a nonprofit fundraising arm that provides more flexibility for grant funding opportunities, as well as engaging with philanthropic organizations and institutions across the area to increase that investment into South King County. We also are working through that South King County Joint Planners and Developers Group to better understand barriers to housing construction in South King County, and working on ideas on how that group can work together to address some of those barriers. And then we also maintain an inventory and assessment of existing programs for affordable rental and ownership housing. So this is one way of coordinating amongst the South King County cities to see what each other is doing and learn from each other in terms of what is working and what is in place in our partner jurisdictions. We also have some areas in need of attention. So these are areas that need to be further scoped through this year or will be beginning later this year. So we have identified the need and desire to create more of an inventory of our naturally occurring affordable housing. So this is affordable housing that is not regulated by any sort of subsidy or government requirement, but is actually what is commonly referred to as naturally occurring, but is also incredibly vulnerable to market pressures for redevelopment and also from rising housing costs across South King County. So really creating a little bit of an assessment and inventory of that to better understand what type of housing stock we have, how affordable it is, where it is, and where there might be acquisition opportunities that could feed into that SCIP Housing Capital Fund. We also have identified through some work that we did sub-regionally for housing needs, a desire for the South King County cities to work together on potential design standards and desired requirements for implementation of housing action plans. So we'll be working with a South King County planners group to really think about which of those can be implemented on a regional level, or there can be shared policies and strategies across the cities. And then lastly, we're working with a group of stakeholders developing more of an affordable housing and homelessness awareness toolkit. So this is thinking about that education side of things and providing more space for broader communication and education across the region around affordable housing and homelessness and the drivers of both and the connections between the two. This is just an overview of our work plan and budget process. So currently we are in this outreach and update phase to our partner councils. Our executive board will be meeting actually tomorrow to go through some of our work plan and budget planning. And then with adoption of a work plan, a recommended work plan in June that will come back to each of our partner councils for adoption later this summer. So in terms of priority setting, we have had some initial discussion with our SCIP staff work group and identified a couple priority areas for the budget and several priorities for our 2022 work plan. In terms of the budget, two key priorities. One is to adopt a balanced budget that includes 2 full-time positions. So currently we have 1 full-time executive manager and a 3/4-time program coordinator. And in order to really effectively implement our work plan, we feel that we need both those positions to be full-time. So we'll be looking at some budget scenarios of what that looks like, getting that second position to full-time. We also have identified a priority as we worked through that SCIP advisory board structure and got a lot of community feedback into that process of looking into a compensation structure for advisory board members. And we will be developing that in our budget scenarios as well. In terms of our work plan, we kind of reviewed some of those ongoing areas of work as well as the reoccurring areas of work. So continuing to build on those and incorporate those into our 2022 work plan as we carry forward many of those ongoing items. Also thinking about additional strategies to preserve existing affordable housing in South King County. This feeds right into that inventory of the naturally occurring affordable housing and working with some of our partners and stakeholders and better developing some strategies for us to think about how we preserve that affordable housing stock. And then again, this focus on educational opportunities, really making the connection between SCIP's mission and the development of affordable housing and preservation of affordable housing and the connection to homelessness services, outreach, and best practices. So I think it's pretty well understood and that housing is one of the main drivers of homelessness, but it has been identified as a key area of education opportunity to tie into some of that work that I talked about in that toolkit. And then again, tying our educational opportunities with our SCIP executive board directly into our work plan so that we are providing opportunities for education around emerging issues or changing legislation that feeds into our SCIP work plan and supports their decisions. And then lastly, we've talked to the staff work group level about identifying some strategic planning goals. So in response to the requirements of our interlocal agreement, we adopt an annual work plan and budget, but it has been identified that it would be very useful for us to really think long-term about our strategic 3 to 5 year goals and objectives, and will really help us to implement our work plan and also go through this annual process more strategically. With that, I think a lot of you have my contact information, but if not, please feel free to reach out to me if you have follow-up questions that we don't get to tonight, or any feedback or input that you think of after this. I know that happens to me a lot, so please don't hesitate to reach out with any of that. And with that, I will turn it back over to the mayor. Happy to answer any questions that you all have.
As soon as I can see the full screen, I'll see if there are hands. I see Councilmember Bangs and then Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Bangs, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the presentation. From my earlier time on the council, and I know Councilmember Buxton's been very in tune to what's going on. I recall a time when we said we had to do some inventorying in each city related to affordable, not just affordable, but any housing available for the homelessness, right? For the homeless. So Angela, I'm hearing it again, and I'm not sure if there's been any action at all. And I know we said at that time it took, you know, a body to do that in every city. And I believe we approached Des Moines at some point, and I can't remember what exactly was said. It was probably the same thing. You know, we need the manpower to do it. But again, what I'm concerned about at this point, because I've been on many panels listening to many of these same issues, and the fear is there's absolutely no movement. Understanding COVID, got it, totally get it. But there's a constant administrative bent and not enough action related to really alleviating homelessness, houselessness, or whatever you want to call it. So I've got some angst around that, because I'm hearing, again, many of the same things I heard 3 and 4 years ago. And I know that, you know, it doesn't go away. You need the staffing, you know, you need your advisory board, you need the support, we need the money. What actions have we been able to move forward with, giving our council a better picture of some kind of forward movement? That's one. And then the next is, where is this advisory board application posted? And what are you looking for? I mean, I'd like to see the application myself, but where is that posted? So anyway, those are my questions.
Yeah, thank you for those, Councilmember Bang. To your first point, I absolutely appreciate that concern and that angst, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. We have made progress in terms of creating an inventory. I talked about the naturally occurring affordable housing. We have made quite a bit of progress in terms of inventorying and understanding where our subsidized housing stock is across the region. That is something that we did as part of a sub-regional effort, and that we have been partnering with King County in some of their work to do this at a county scale. So not just South King County, but across King County. So that is one way to really identify some of those areas that maybe have expiring tax credit properties or expiring affordable housing regulations that we can be strategic about advocating for acquisition or recognizing where there might be opportunities there. So definitely some significant progress there. To your point about some of these other things, it does take time. And I know that's not a perfect answer, but one of the other areas we've made quite a bit of progress and really excited about is our SCIP Housing Capital Fund. That did take quite a bit of time to provide the tool for all of our SCIP partners to pool those sales tax credit funds. We just are kind of in the final stages of, I think we had our last city adopt that interlocal agreement just last week, which is great. And it provides that tool to actually move those funds into SCIP's Housing Capital Fund. So there was quite a bit of work just to get those pooled resources together. And then going through a priority setting and planning process this spring with the SCIP Executive Board as a part of really thinking through exactly how that looks and what our priorities are for that fund. Really important part of that to make sure that we're responding to the needs across the county, and we're also thinking through how those decisions are made by our executive board that are both geographically equitable, but then also equitable and responsive to the needs across the county. So a couple of things, but also just really appreciate the fact that, you know, we are in the early stages and there is a lot of process and administration. And I feel that. To the second part of your question, I will post in the chat a link to where the application is for the advisory board. And that'll give a little bit better sense of what we're looking for. There is a variety of areas identified in terms of technical expertise, but also making sure that we have advisory board members that are affiliated with South King County, really engaged in community groups, organizations throughout the county, and very representative of the communities in the county. So I will post that, and that will give you a better idea. Also happy to share the executive board resolution that kind of goes through the structure in a little bit more detail.
Angela,
Thank you.
Angela, we don't offer chat. Can you send that information directly to our city clerk?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
And then I've seen a couple of hands in the meantime, so I'm going to go to Councilmember Harris. And then I have, after Councilmember Harris, I have Councilmember Nutting, and I saw Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Bangs expressed my concerns perfectly. I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Harris. That takes me to Councilmember Nutting.
Sorry there, having a hard time getting unmuted. Angela, great presentation. I'd actually like, if you could, send the slide deck to Bonnie so we could get that. I have so many questions that occurred during the presentation, and in the interest of time, I just want to touch on one subject, and it naturally occurring affordable housing. And I'm asking about this because I'm actually working in a neighborhood with what I think is naturally occurring affordable housing. And it's not great. I'm not sure that it might be one step above being homeless, but my question is several parts: is what is naturally occurring affordable housing, and what are the steps to make sure that it's actually livable? Because some of these places are not.
Yeah, really, really good question. I think to your point, much of the naturally occurring affordable housing is also lower quality housing, unfortunately. So, and to your question about how do we define it, that's a really good question, and something that is part of that further scoping that we need to do, because there's a variety of ways that we can think about defining this naturally occurring affordable housing and inventorying it. There's a lot of assumptions that come along with it, but some of it is like the age of the housing stock, the quality, because a lot of times that feeds into how affordable it is. But there's quite a few assumptions in terms of how we look at that and how we inventory it. So that's kind of the stage that we're at right now, is thinking about what are the right assumptions to make in terms of that inventory. So, and it may be that there are different assumptions depending on the community that we're looking at, but we're kind of working through that right now. There's also another side of this, and it's what is a rent that's affordable, and that does range across the sub-region, across King County, and it also depends on your housing type. How many earners do you have in your household? How many members of the household are there? So affordable is not as easy to define, but it's really dependent on where you're living, what your income is, and a lot of those factors as well. And I will definitely put the presentation slides in an email to the city clerk as well.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your answer. And I actually look forward to maybe possibly having a offline conversation to get some more of my questions answered. So I thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of my questions were already answered as well, including I was going to make a chat comment, so good job on that. So, Angela, I do want to give a shout out. Angela works very hard. I've appreciated her support, and Trish as well, who you haven't met tonight, is Angela's sidekick, and I appreciate that what they bring to the table, and they're working to make this a regional entity become sustainable in our region. And I know if it's something small that you plan to do, you can get up and going tomorrow. If it's something really big you plan to do, it just takes a while. So I'm trying to be patient. I have echoed your concerns often, and to, I think, Angela's chagrin sometimes. But I wanted to follow up with Jeremy's question a moment ago. So I was not aware that we were working on an inventory. And so the purpose of that is acquisition and preservation, Angela, or is it going to be part of a dashboard available to the member cities for their own use as data? A question, is just going to be for SCIP in order to look for acquisitions?
I think there's a variety of uses, but one of the things that we do need to be a little bit aware of is making something available to the greater public. Also makes it available to other developers. These are properties that are potentially vulnerable to redevelopment. So that is something to think about, and something that has been raised by staff, is just being really aware of what it means to create this inventory, and what we're going to do with it, and what others could do with it as well. So definitely something to be aware of. But yes, we are trying to come up with some good assumptions as I kind of went through with Councilmember Nutting of what how we can create an inventory across the subregion that will help us. And honestly, some of our other stakeholder groups, the Housing Authority, for example, is another group that is really cognizant of vulnerability and affordable housing across the region, and they look for these acquisition opportunities. So not just for us and for that SCIP Housing Capital Fund, but probably more likely for us to think about partnering with something like the Housing Authority or some of our other affordable housing developers and providers, because what we won't be doing is actually owning or managing property, but looking for others to support and provide funding for them. So looking for those opportunities and partnerships, and that inventory will help us to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands at this time. I would just like to say, Angela, you and your I should say small team, based on this presentation, have one heck of a lot to try and get accomplished. And I'm sure you must have amazing patience, because you are making strides forward as you've articulated, but you're moving a mountain. And I just appreciate the fact that there are people out there with your passion and your knowledge, trying to help us move forward to fix this problem. So thank you very much for your presentation tonight. We'll look forward to getting the copy with into the city clerk's office, and getting the link to your executive board. So anyway, thank you. That's all. It doesn't seem like enough, but thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Angela and Nicole. We're going to have a very brief update on COVID. We'd anticipated a more extensive update. but there's just a very few things to report, which is our Emergency Operations Center. We continue to meet bi-weekly, sharing information and perspective on what's going on with the issue. There's been a lot of confusion generated by statements from different agencies at different levels, be they the federal government with the CDC, the King County Public Health. Shannon's tried to keep on top of all of that, and I'm going to ask her if she has any comments to add. But at the moment, trying to figure out where we are, what we will require if we have the opportunity to reopen City Hall. We're trying to take advantage of a lot of situations like the judge described virtual court. We've looked at ways that we could perhaps provide more virtual opportunities, which have benefits to employees in terms of healthcare and proximity to home, all of those things. And in the fall, I think what our plan at the moment is to do like a at least managers and directors level discussion at City Hall, which we had about 5 years ago, the last time, to identify essential functions and ways that we could both cooperate and implement virtual dynamics to what our essential functions are. So we're watching closely. We need to make some decisions about masks at some point being required in City Hall, about we do health screening. That seems to be helpful. We fog our carpets regularly. I know law enforcement does that along with first responders. But there's no defined kind of process. And there's this sort of looming, yeah, let's reopen and everything goes back to normal, but probably nothing goes back to normal. And so we're just, as a city, watching the guidance as carefully as we can and trying to make sure that any steps we take that relax requirements is done appropriately and with thought. And Shannon, do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, Michael, you did a great job as usual. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I only can do that because Shannon does such a great job in telling me what's going on. The last issue I wanted to mention tonight, I think it's good news that, on consent, you will see there's an item, I think it's number 3, where we're planning to approve a police consultant services contract. The chief is here, and this is designed to help us successfully implement a strategy of using body cameras for our police. And I think the chief will talk a little about process, but this has involved, engaging the guild, especially the guild leadership, the command staff at PD, our IT folks who can help with this, but cannot do this whole thing. But essentially, I think we're on a positive track. I think that speaks volumes to the accountability and perspective to reform in the most positive manner what's going on in PD. And body cameras are not perfect, trust me, but they are one more way to work to ensure public trust and accountability for everyone. So Chief, do you want to say a few words? I just wanted to mention it as it's kind of sitting out here a little out of context.
Well, I believe you covered most of the high points. As you know, I think it's in 2 weeks or so, the city council will bring a presentation back to Public Safety Emergency Management Committee and to our council with our recommendations or our what we found as part of our pilot program as it relates to body cameras. I can tell you it is one of the highlights of police reform at a national level, at the state level. And in fact, there was a law just signed by the governor in this past week that requires certain interviews and interrogations to be done with that they be recorded both audio and video. And there are some opinions by attorneys that the only way to really effectively comply with that law is to have body cameras. So we will be presenting that information coming up in the next week or so, but or the next couple weeks. But it certainly is the way law enforcement is going in the area of accountability and reform.
Thank you, Chief. I don't know if any questions exist now. Perhaps it will come up with the item or not. As the chief said, this is part of a process where we're concluding a pilot and going to make recommendations to council shortly. So with that, Mayor, that concludes the city manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you. And this will take us forward to our consent calendar. Will the clerk please read the consent calendar?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, Mental Health Awareness Month proclamation. Item 3, consultant services contract with Matthew Johnson. And item 4, North Marina parking lot bulkhead and restroom replacement pre-construction support, EXELTECH consulting design contract supplemental agreement number 4. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Thank you. I saw a hand from Councilmember Nutting.
I approve the consent as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion was made by Councilmember Nutting, seconded by Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Is there any item a council member wishes to pull?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item 3.
Okay, item 3 has been pulled. So at this point, we will be voting on the block of items 1, 2, and 4. All those in favor, please raise your right hand until I call your name. Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Banks, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. Okay, those items pass 7-0. At this point, I will go to Councilmember Harris, who pulled the item, to introduce why he pulled the item, and then we will move into discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I wrote an email asking 3 very basic questions about the item, and I did not receive a reply. So I would like to ask those questions right now. I apologize to my colleagues, but I'd like to get some information before voting. And the 3 questions are, is WatchGuard Vista the brand of body camera that we have settled on?
You want to take that?
Yeah, if you'd like me to respond to that,
Sure.
I would say that we have not settled on any body cameras at this time until the city council directs us to go in that direction. If that is the recommendation of the city council, then it is very likely that we would go with WatchGuard because they are the vendor that does our dash cameras and our cameras for our detective interview room. So it would be an integration issue, and it's also more cost effective than many of the other alternatives.
Okay, that's the preferred brand if we go ahead. Okay, thank you. Number 2, can you just in general terms, describe what this WACIC/NCIC computer station does?
Yeah, that's both the state and national police database where we put our stolen property, stolen vehicles, people with warrants. That is a highly regulated computer system, and currently it's out on the desk in the records area that is open to observation when people walk by. So we're hoping to move that computer base back into a more private area. I believe that will also put us into better compliance with state and federal guidelines.
Okay, so it needs to be a dedicated machine. There's some regulatory kind of.
Correct.
Okay, number 3, what is the intended purpose of the lobby computer?
Yeah, this is something that we have been working on for some time, and really it's to help serve our community members better, more effectively, and more efficiently. Currently, when people come when our residents or anybody comes into our records section, and we're trying to encourage them to write online police reports or to get their pet license or alarm issues done online, some people don't have a computer at home, or they're not savvy, or they need help. So we would like to provide an option where if they chose to come into the station, we could actually help them to complete those tasks. It helps with efficiency of our department. And we're also looking to provide an opportunity for resources. So if we get somebody who's, say, homeless or suffering from mental health or addiction issues, we can help provide them with those resources more effectively, rather than saying, go to the library and look it up yourself. So it's just a way that we can try to help our community better.
So the public can just, walk through the double doors and just, use it for license renewals and to do, basic research, that sort of thing. I don't want to.
Correct.
Okay, cool. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, I saw Deputy Mayor Mahoney's hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was going to make these comments in my board and committee reports, but since it's pulled, I think it's apropos that we say it here. Chief, I just have to compliment you and your staff, going outside and getting consultants and so forth to make the business or make the police, a better tool for our community. It's amazing what you're doing. You're willing to do that and not keep it in your system, get better. I think back to you and your staff leading the charge on the mental response team. That was stellar, and look where we're going with that, and how we've connected to so many other cities. But I have to say that I am impressed that you're willing to always be on the cutting edge of policing, which is, quite frankly, under scrutiny in this day and age. And what's been nice is you have always seemed, you and your force, and I give you all credit, always seem to be a step ahead of what I'm seeing elsewhere. So I just want to wholeheartedly thank you for that.
Thank you. And Mayor, if I may, just briefly, I want to be clear that we have been working very well with Dale and Chris in our city's IT program. And in fact, our consultant that we've identified, we've had them meet with Dale, and this is more an effort that they can all work together. As you know, our resources are very limited. So this is a value added in addition to work together for effectiveness. And I just want to be clear on that. We get outstanding service from Dale and Chris. They're just spread thin.
I can very much appreciate that. I saw a hand from Councilmember Nutting.
I absolutely agree. In a day and age where you can't afford not to get it right, we need to get it right as a small town. So in that, I make the motion to approve the police consulting services contract between the city of Des Moines and Matthew Johnson for IT services in the amount not to exceed $100,000 and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement substantially in the form as attached.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilmember Nutting, seconded by Councilmember Bangs. All those in favor, please raise your right hand until I call your name. Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. That passes 7-0. Okay, folks. Great. That completes our consent agenda calendar. I have a proclamation that we passed that I will now read into the record. I will now, at the City of Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims the month of May 2021 as Mental Health Awareness Month and encourages all citizens, businesses, and schools and community organizations to take the stigma-free pledge located at www.nami.org/stigma-free in observance of the Mental Health Awareness Month. And with that, I will take us forward to our public hearing over the Transportation Improvement Plan for 2022 to 2041. And it looks like we have our Public Works Director, Brandon Carver, will be addressing that. So at this point, I will open the public hearing and welcome Brandon to give us the presentation.
Actually, Andrew's gonna do this as well. City Engineer Andrew.
Yes, Bonnie, do you have the PowerPoints?
There we go.
Perfect, thank you. Well, good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Andrew Murgis, City Engineer, and I'm excited to provide a brief presentation for the 2022 through 2041 Transportation Improvement Plan public hearing. Next slide, please. The TIP is a list of 91 planned projects that are not financially constrained and are ordered by priority. The TIP is derived from the Comprehensive Transportation Plan that sets policy goals and strategies for existing and future multimodal transportation systems over a 20-year horizon. It further identifies a manageable network of roadways, pedestrian and bike facilities, and transit priorities, all to support the city. Next slide, please. Projects that are proposed in the TIP are based on safety, capacity, pedestrian, bicycle, and transit needs, as well as city-conducted traffic engineering studies and citizen input. The TIP also is used to coordinate priorities across multiple agencies and stakeholder groups, such as franchise utilities and neighboring agencies like CTAC and Kent and Federal Way. Next slide, please. The TIP provides the basis for the 6-year CIP or capital improvement plan and assists in various planning and coordination efforts. It is required by state law and submitted to the Washington State Department of Transportation and the Puget Sound Regional Council. And most importantly, the TIP positions projects for future grants and loans. Without the TIP, it'd be tough to apply for most loans, especially at the federal level. Next slide, please. The public hearing, we published the public notice on May 4th and May 11th, 2021. Public comment opportunity tonight at the hearing, and I've also received public comments throughout the year. I've received 3 public comments on 3 priorities. The first one is priority 27, Redondo Way Sidewalk Project, a request to complete that project. Priority number 47, the Redondo Beach Drive Sidewalk Project, to complete that one as well. And priority 17, the Redondo Area Parking Management Plan. Next slide, please. Just a couple highlights for 2021. Priority number 1, our pavement preservation program. We've had a lot of collaboration with the franchise utilities, primarily the North Hill with Highland Water District and interlocal agreements. Water District 54 for 8th Avenue South, which is underway, and current collaboration with Lake Haven Water and Sewer District for Lower Woodmont pavement improvements down there as well. For priority number 3, the ADA compliance program, we continued our trip hazard removal and ADA curb ramp replacements. The next project was a priority we took off, but it's one we completed that was delayed due to COVID. Our 24th Avenue South and South 208th intersection improvements are brand new signal. We just finished that. Priority number 8, the Barn Street Trail South segment. In collaboration with the Highline School District and the Transportation Improvement Board, we've been able to complete the trail from Kent Des Moines Road to South 240th Street. That's completed. In priority 48, the 16th Avenue South and South 240th intersection improvements, which is dedicated towards adding left turn pockets at the signalized intersection. Highline School District, as part of their elementary school improvements, completed that project as well. Next slide, please. The 2022 through 2041 TIP revisions from last year, there's only 3 of them. Priority 14, South 223rd and Cliff Avenue street improvements. We updated the project description to add the potential for an urban stream concept. Priority 15, the South 240th Street improvement segment 1. We updated that description to make sure we have a continuous 2-way left turn lane in between 20th and SR 99. And then priority 48, which I discussed for the 16th and 240th intersection improvements, we deleted that project due to completion of that. Next slide, please. And that concludes my public hearing presentation. And I have the suggested motion on the screen here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, it's being that we're in a public hearing, I'll see if there's any public comment. So has anyone signed up to speak?
No one has signed up to speak.
Okay, no one has signed up to speak. Council, because we're in a public hearing, this is the opportunity for you to ask questions only. There's no statements, it's question format. So if anyone has a question based on the presentation that was just provided us. Okay, I see Councilmember Harris.
This will be really quick. It's just a question I guess asked all the time from the residents. What is the estimated completion date, if we have it, for both sides of the sidewalk on next to Des Moines Elementary, the new school?
Councilmember Harris, to just clarify, are we talking 16th Avenue South or South 240th Street?
40th, the south side of the street.
Okay. Obviously, part of our side is completed, but that corridor project to South 240th Street is, I believe, segment 3. It's unfunded at this time, so I don't have a good answer. We're focusing on the segment between 16th and 20th right now. So I would be hesitant to even venture a guess, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is Andrew jumping in on that really quick from a grant perspective as well. Like Brandon said, the sections between 16th and SR 99, the 2 segments of 240th, probably would be higher priority, more, I guess, if you want to call it midterm projects, where west of 16th would be long-term.
Okay. That's disappointing, but okay. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve draft resolution number 2102, adopting the 2022 to 2041 Transportation Improvement Plan for the City of Des Moines.
Do I have a second? I see Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand until I call your name. Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. Passes 7-0. Okay, that motion passes. And now this takes us to new business items. And the first one is public comment at committee meetings, and we have a presentation by City Manager Matthias.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything, but we looked at this carefully in terms of other cities. And I think that this is a great example of where you have an intersection between some of the constraints that COVID placed on our ability to function and on what would be considered sort of the normal function of the council. So the committee hearings have always been, since I've been here, designed to provide briefings to council on subjects that may or may not appear before the dais at a future point. And so essentially the committees are vetting information. Typically it's new information. And in the past, pre-COVID, I can remember many times the public came to committee hearings and had a concern about something that was being discussed. And they were recognized, typically toward the end of the meeting, in an opportunity to voice their concerns. And that worked well for a couple of reasons. One being that until the issue was vetted and described and discussed, it was hard to know exactly, I mean, you know, what the issue was about. And so we always ask for informed comments from everyone, including ourselves. And so that was kind of how it worked. It was relatively informal, but I don't recall anyone ever being refused the opportunity to speak if they chose to say something. And so we looked at other cities. Bonnie did, our city clerk, and some cities have committee meetings, some don't, some have hybrids, some have advisory groups that include council members and the community. There's a number of different forms, and then not everybody who provides a committee structure has access to public comment for their residents. And the idea is that anything that goes before that subcommittee or that council committee is going to come before the dais anyways if there's action that's going to occur. So I think that's pretty much what we found out. I don't think that we're in an exceptional kind of pariah for how we conduct ourselves. And Bonnie, would you like to add to that at all?
I think you got it right, Michael. Thank you. Good job.
Well, I just got briefed well by you. So the idea, yeah, so I think our perspective is kind of council call. I think that as things return to some level of normalcy, yeah, public comment should be a part of everything we do for the most part. And I think there were also some IT issues that would be involved, but we could do, I'm sure we could do it off of Zoom anyways. So with that, I don't know how definitive that is, but it's just to say that we had a process that functioned. COVID disrupted that. I don't think it's a fair critique that we're not making those available. And perhaps there's more we can do right now as we come to the end of COVID. I don't know. The last comment I'll make is that the same constraints that were related to the agenda for community council meetings, the mayor knows because we went through these, and also with Tim carefully to figure out, were we within the purview of the Open Public Meetings Act given COVID declarations or not? And so now as we maybe can move away from that and expand the breadth of what we're able to address, there's opportunities to provide input, but that's a council call.
At this time, are there any council members that wish to make a comment? Okay, I see Councilmember Harris. 1 minute, please. I see Councilmember Harris. I see Councilmember Buxton. Just a minute. Okay. Okay, and I'll yield until after that. Okay, so at this point, the first hand I saw was Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have personally witnessed members of the public desire to say something at committee meetings and be told they could not, or been told how exceptional it is, allowed to speak for a moment, but then told, well, this is extraordinary. And I think we should welcome their input. And I think the only way to guarantee that is to have it in writing. It's not a big deal. It should just be in writing. But, and I'm sorry to put something in tangential, it's more important actually to me that we record these meetings for the same reason as the public comment, because a lot of the detail work that the public cares about are at the committee meetings. So, you know, if somebody really wants to engage on the bread and butter issues that the public cares about, you know, their street, they want to be at these committee meetings and they want to be able to watch them at their convenience, and they want to be able to say something for, you know, a minute or two. It's just, to me, it's just, you know, pretty obvious. So I hope we can formalize both those things. Thank you.
Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I want to appreciate what the city manager said and how he described how the operation of committees happened before COVID. And I had that experience myself. So I guess in summary, right now in our council rules, there's nothing written that allows or disallows, regardless of our habit. It's at the discretion of the chair what happens in a committee, especially in regard to public comment. And, you know, there has been a little bit of feedback about, well, that's not fair. But writing down laws and codes helps to clarify what's good, but it doesn't guarantee what's fair. So even if this were written down, there would be another attendant difficulty. There's always new challenges with everything that we write down that's designed to protect. So what we need is discretion that comes from courageous and wise leadership. And that's the goal of making someone the chair. So my recommendation is basically based on the responsibility of leadership is to enact good judgment when there is no law, just like why we have judges in our society. So the goal of committees is to get into the weeds and have candid working conversation. Committees are not designed to be little council meetings. Thus, our regulation on preventing a quorum by only allowing 3 CMs at the table to begin with. So public comment and input can be helpful and has been entertained in committee a few times since I've been involved in council procedure. So my personal opinion is to not have a change to allow or disallow, just continue to allow public comment to be at the discretion of the chair. Though my personal opinion is that if I were chair, I would allow it, but I would limit it to maybe something like a maximum of 6 minutes. I would require a heads up. And I would also be sincerely interested, you know, I would want it to be organically generated. In other words, by genuine personal interest and not artificially generated through a messaging campaign. So the people that I would allow to have comment in a committee where I was chair, it would be generated out of sincere personal interest, somebody that would be interested in the subject at hand anyway. So that is my opinion and comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. Where I have been the chair of committees and also sitting on committees where our community has been able to speak and disallowed to be able to speak. These are where staff has come to us with ideas and tried to vet them. And again, to your point, where there's only 3 council members present as opposed to 4 that get to make the decision. And I've watched things die in committee that staff has brought to us as well. And this is where we get to make decisions to bring it to the dais, and where the community has the chance to speak at it several times for the most part. And I have, being the chair, allowed community members, if time allows, to let us go. Most of the committees are stacked and lead us right into council. And our workloads are incredible. And without controlling the meeting and getting the work done that's on the agenda for these committees, and allowing things to go longer and longer and longer, we don't have the ability to do that. And the community has the ability to speak once it gets brought to the dais. And we need to be able to work through things and get it moved on. And for that, I can't support this. And I do agree with you that it's up to the chair. If we have time, if we have an hour for a committee meeting and only one thing on there, let's take up that hour. But if we don't, and we're time boxed for an hour and there's 15 things on the agenda, we got to get them done. There's too much to do. My comments.
Okay, wait a second. So I'm seeing some hands go up. So let's see. Next person is Deputy Mayor Mahoney, followed by Councilmember Martinelli, and then Councilmember Banks.
Yeah, I candidly, at these council members, at these committee meetings, I think about the fact that we're time boxed. And it's a bevy of different subjects that we talk about before anybody would want to make public comment. As a chair of a committee, certainly if there was time, I would allow it. But I would also say that if they did attend and they did want to say something and we were out of time, I would ask them to submit something in writing to the committee. And then we could take it from there and pass it on to staff. So there's the opportunity for people to speak in the beginning stages of a lot of these things that are going to come before the council. And as what was said before by the city manager, a lot of these things come to the council, full council. There's chance for public comment and discussion and so forth as well, where it's either approved or not. So for that reason, I can't support it, because I think it restrains us too much for what the purpose of these meetings were.
Councilmember Martinelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Since I've been in office, I've put forth quite a few proposals, and I would say that undeniably, in my opinion, this is the most straightforward, common sense proposal. I'm utterly shocked that my colleagues are not in support of it. As the city manager stated, yes, there are instances in which policies are passed in committee, sent to council, and then the public can give comment. There's just as many policies that are rejected in committee, in which case the public then is given absolutely no opportunity to speak in public on those issues. What it comes down to is we formulate, we discuss, and we pass policies in committee. And so for the sake of the public and for the sake of listening to them, that's why I support allowing public comments at these committee meetings. And to respond to Councilmember Buxton, I think honestly that's the worst case scenario, is to leave it to the discretion of the chair, because then the chair can allow comments only in line with what they believe if they decide to do so. And there's absolutely nothing preventing them from doing that. And I think that that's just wrong, and it's not the way that we should do it. In terms of time, we have really short council meetings. We have really short committee meetings when you look at other cities, incredibly short, actually. So to say that we can't make time to allow the public to be heard, I think is absurd. Some of our public safety committee meetings are literally 20, 30 minutes long. There's no reason we can't put those earlier in the day, even the meetings that are 40 minutes long. We could set those up slightly earlier in the day for the sake of allowing the public to be heard. And as Councilmember Harris said, the fact that my colleagues are stating that public comment should not be allowed and they are not supporting recording these committee meetings is really backwards, in my opinion, and is a sign of where the majority is at in terms of how much they care or don't care about the public's input. I'll leave it at that. Again, I think this is very straightforward. I'm surprised, but not surprised that my colleagues are not supporting it. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, and that takes us to Councilmember Banks.
I believe the recommendation that was provided by city staff to address this issue when comprehensive rule amendments are considered is appropriate. I will say, based on Councilmember Nutting's comments, we have served on several committees together over the last 7 years, and there hasn't been one time that we have not had someone, and truly it's rare, come to a committee meeting that has not had an opportunity to speak. I'm really taking offense to these two that are saying we as a council, by the way, of which you two are as well, have an opportunity to be biased in terms of who speaks and who doesn't. Please stop clumping us with this QAnon shit. Sorry, tired. Stop it. This is a good council, a fair council. These committee meetings are fair. You can shake your head all you want, Anthony Martinelli, but what you know can be put into a thimble when it comes to what this council does, has done, and will continue to do. So I am not for moving forward with changing anything until we look at all the rules.
Okay, Councilmember Harris, this is your second time to speak. I will make a comment when you're done.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I don't want to, beat a dead horse, but yeah, I don't even know. We want more public engagement. We want more public trust, and just providing the opportunity for people. Well, wait, I have a process question. Should this be a different proposal to talk about recording the meetings, or can we bundle them together here?
It's a different proposal.
Okay, thank you. Then, yeah, I got nothing. Thank you.
You know, I've been here a while, and I do take offense to some of the implications that we are not inclusive and don't listen to the public. There have been times when things have been brought to this council and the public came here and it brought to light, and in particular, I can cite when rezoning that was attempted on 216th to bring multifamily into a neighborhood when the neighborhood had not had adequate notice and the process had not been followed. Policy is not passed in committee, and committee is where discussions occur. Sometimes it's the staff saying, hey, we have this on our plate. We're looking at it from a variety of different angles, and they're trying to get a little bit more information of how to fine tune it before they bring it out to the dais. And I can honestly say we are time boxed. Now, under COVID, we have committee meetings typically at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and 5 p.m. You know, for a lot of us, we still work, and a lot of council members will work going forward. And the thing about it is maybe somebody else doesn't work, or they work from 5 o'clock in the morning until 1:30 in the afternoon. I don't know. But when you're serving on the council, this job doesn't pay anybody's mortgage. It doesn't do anything like that. So under non-COVID circumstances, our council meetings start at 7 p.m. Our meetings start and our committees start before that, but they start much later in the day. The whole purpose of a committee is to discuss an issue between the staff and the committee. It's not fully baked. And sometimes, yeah, I will openly admit the council goes, I can't get my head around this. And it's not the council, it's the committee members going, I can't get my head around this. We need more information. Bring it back to us. Help us understand where you're going with this or what's up. Sometimes we need the attorney to go look into legal issues around it, or we need the staff to look into some of the history around it. There have been times if we think it's going to be met with some kind of legal issue, you've got to figure out what's the case law. But the chair manages the time constraints of those meetings. And as long as I have been involved in municipal government, whether it's being here at the City of Des Moines or on the Highline School Board, committee meetings we're always time boxed into an hour. And people do that, and you're given the agendas ahead of time and so forth. And it's for efficiency reasons. It's so you can prepare, do your best to think about the kinds of things that you're going to ask questions about, and you can partake in the discussion. But out of that discussion does not come a decision. The only decision that can be made with this city is from this dais by the body of 7. And it's that majority that does that. Public conversation, it is a chair's obligation to manage the business of the city that is before them and in that meeting. And all I'll say is that if there is an opportunity, that's one thing. I think Councilmember Buxton was right. You know, when you bring in a committee discussion and you're trying to figure out how to bake the bread and you're not really sure you have the right recipe, the fact is you're working through it. And there might be people who come in and say, no, we can't do this. And you get barraged by a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with really where this is going. If it goes anywhere, in some cases at all. This is about discussion between a subset of the council that is not a decision-making body and the staff for the purposes of really figuring out, you know, these things, what things are coming down the pipeline. But all decisions have to come out of committee, go to the dais, and all 7 of the body have to vote, or the majority that's present, given that there might be an absence or 2. We have never excluded, whenever we have made the point at times that in committee meetings, it's really an exchange of ideas. I've encouraged people to listen and fully communicated to them. We may not allow and don't have a spot necessarily for public comment, but I can also tell you that the topic's not fully baked. So the comment may not even be, the potential comments may not even be relevant to where this thing goes. So I have to say that I'm not in favor of modifying these agendas because it meets somebody else's motivation. And I do take offense to the fact that there are implications that this council has not been transparent and forthright. When I think about the council members that I have gone out with and talked to, you know, we've spoken in the committee, we've done states of the city, we answer our phones, we deal with all sorts of things. So with that, I can honestly say I'm not in favor of moving this forward. And I have Member Martinelli, this will be your second time.
Thank you, Mayor. With all due respect, what I just heard was a bunch of nonsensical and political reasons for why we shouldn't allow the public to have a bigger voice in our process. That disappoints me. And I've heard both from the mayor and the city manager about how if something passes or moves forward in committee, then it goes to the council and then the public can discuss it or give their public input. That doesn't talk about the items that are rejected in committee. Items that are discussed and are not moved forward. The public then, it dies in committee and the public has absolutely no say in it. And in response to the anger put forward by Councilmember Bangs, it's not about the individual chairs that we have right now. It's about the fact that they should not be allowed to do that by rule. I don't want the current council or a council 10 years from now to have the opportunity to reject public comment in committee because they know it's not going to align with what they feel. That wasn't a personal attack on anyone on this council. It was a personal attack on the way our policy is currently set up. And that's why I am trying to get that policy changed. Thank you.
Councilmember Bangs, it's your second time as well.
Let's just be clear. As far as anger, no. As far as passion about this council, yes. As far as the constant insults we get from you, and at times, Councilmember Harris, I'm extremely frustrated by that. We have worked ourselves to the point where we have done very, very well for this city. What you continue to do is misalign what we're trying to do in these committee meetings with, and you're talking about a political agenda, that's exactly what you do. You make it a political agenda. This is a municipality that works for this city. Things that die in committee doesn't necessarily mean they're going to not come back. It may mean we don't have time for it. It may mean we need more information from the staff. Stop making it sound like we're doing something that we're not supposed to. You constantly do that. Stop it. It's not necessary. And no, I'm not angry. I'm frustrated with you.
So at this point, everybody's had a chance to comment. What I will do is I will ask, is there the desire for all those in favor of moving a mandatory public comment forward at public committees, please raise your hand. I see Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Martinelli. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I see Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. Okay, this issue is closed. We are past the new business introduction, but I believe Councilmember Buxton reached out to me. She had something she wanted to. Did you still wish to do that, or are we? Okay, please go forward.
So there was a subject. We received communication from a resident in regard to the housing of chickens and our chicken ordinance. Actually, it was Rosie, and I'm not sure if she's still on the, oh, there she is still. She's still listening, patient woman. So my comment is, I love chickens. I have them. They're lovely pets, and they're a sustainable resource, especially as our society moves forward in urban agriculture. So there, in the past, there's been discussion on the community pages, even before I was elected. And I actually made a campaign promise to bring this up because I love animal husbandry and I love urban agriculture and I love chickens. So I bring it up every year, just mention it, and I've never pressed the issue. Then I ended up having a discussion with Rosie, and subsequent to my lengthy discussion with her, the subject was then made public and even generated more communication to the council, which also generated our awareness of a lot of community support for changing our code. So therefore, I would like to make a motion. I move to remand this issue to the appropriate committee and/or committees for consideration on their 2022 work plans.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move that forward to the 2022 work plans. I believe the two committees that would be involved would be environment, and then because it would involve an ordinance change around urban farming, it would also be econ. And so in January of 2022, this would be noted by the city clerk to have that as a point of discussion and consideration on their work plans. So that's really what we're talking about. Is that correct, Councilmember Buxton? And I'm sorry, did you categorize this as urban farming, or you were specifically, or are you specifically talking about chickens?
Well, I'm specifically talking about chickens, and I also understand from some conversation that it would be wise to address an assortment of animals that are in our code. So our urban farming or urban agriculture codes. Chickens are not mentioned in just one place in our code. If you look, you Google, not Google, but keyword chicken. So it's a interlocking with many of our codes when you address chicken. So my guess is this would be something where we research and address several of our animal codes.
I think it does make sense to look at this. It was last looked at, I think, I want to say 2012. But I do think, back then we had someone who had, I don't know, I want to say 300 doves. And people say, well, they just coo. They don't make a lot of noise, but they seem to coo around the neighbors at all hours. Their raccoons were quite interested in them, and I'm just saying, how many dogs can you have if bees became a big issue at one point, and I understand why people would want to keep bees, but if you've lived in a neighborhood and I don't know how far bees, I can't recall how far they move from their nest, but there's an issue there if you move into a neighborhood and you don't have, and maybe you have an allergy to bees or your child does or whatever. That's why you have to go and take a look at this from an environmental standpoint and think about those people who moved in being safe and what considerations would have to come about if people were, even if they had the space, but if they were to introduce these types of things, what would be the impact on the neighborhood that was already there and so forth. So it does go to 2 committees, at least. And so I would, Michael, do you think it's reasonable to, the way we're characterizing this is having our urban farming, specifically addressing, chickens, bees, and other animals, and that policy looked at and somehow considered for the work plans for both environment and econ for 2022?
Well, I think that committees at that point are free to, decide what they want to review over the course of the year. I would kind of remind everyone about, which I thought was extremely encouraging, and I want to thank Dan and Scott and Katie for their efforts. But I think when Bill Linscott tells us move forward, and there's so much to do relative to some of the things we're trying to accomplish in the city, that it just has to be pretty carefully vetted, and committee and council need to decide, is that the appropriate place for resources and staff time? And it may well be, and we'll do whatever we're directed, but I'm just saying we can't do it all.
So I see Deputy Mayor Mahoney and then Councilmember Harris.
I just have a question for the city manager. Michael, do you have any kind of estimate of the staff hours that would be required for a review of this?
Yeah, we'll try to keep the coyote from guarding the hen house. I have no idea. I mean, I think Susan's been involved in efforts like this before on the planning side. It will take some dedicated time because there are kind of countervailing current dynamics that would probably need to be changed to clean up the code. So I can't really tell you. I think on a scale of like 1 to 5, 5 being marina redevelopment, we're looking at somewhere between a 2 and a 3, which still takes some level of effort. I don't know, Susan, any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it will depend upon the scope of what we're going to look at. I think that that's a discussion we could have when we're setting the work program for the committee, based on how much of the code we want to look at. It does, when you do animal regulations especially, it does take some effort, because believe it or not everybody feels the same way about this topic in particular. It can get, so there's public outreach you want to do, there's a code amendment process that is required by the state, and we need to review it under the State Environmental Policy Act, send it to the Department of Commerce, have a public hearing, and then adopt code. So there's a level of effort that would be involved in any code.
Okay.
Sounds like next year, huh?
Well, what's being put before us is to consider this for the 2022 work plans. The committees and staff are very heavily allocated at this time. So I think that's a wise contribution. Councilmember Harris, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess, I mean, we have chickens here, right? I mean, lots of people have them. But the people who don't like them are really freaked out. And so I'm just going to throw it out there that their concern is really code enforcement. Okay. I mean, I guess keeping the feed properly stored and so on, because, they have valid concerns about rodents and so on. So I'm wondering if there isn't a public safety piece to this that should codify, what it means to be a responsible, person who has chickens.
I will make
Councilmember Harris, just one comment about that, because police resources are precious, and the deployment of those resources is precious. And so, in establishing priorities, I think that we've learned, and I can remember, and I applaud you for it, the number of times you've said, please go out and get vaccinated. Please take care of yourself in this pandemic, okay? And we know how difficult it is for there to be self-enforcement. And I'm hesitant to say 40%, 60% of Corey's time is going to be out writing tickets because people aren't taking care of their chickens, or they have them illegally, or they're not, whatever. I mean, I just think I'm not saying one way or the other, it's complicated. That's my only point.
No, I agree with you. To me, that's the thing. As Councilmember Buxton talked about in the prior issue, it's a lot of it just comes down to individual responsibility and so on. But that's going to be the concern of the people who are against the chickens. That's all. And I'm just trying to think about that.
Councilmember Harris, it's also, it was covered on recently on TV, animal control, because these are outdoor animals and they're outdoor present all the time. They're, when you consider raccoons and things like that, there was someone who Channel 4 just did a whole deal on this, where someone lived in Seattle where they were allowed to have 3. There are a whole wide variety of I'm speaking to chickens in particular. Some make better pets, some are better layers and things like that. What she ran into was that she found herself breaching the noise ordinance more than anything, because, and it's not, they didn't have roosters. It's just that they can be loud and also just through constant activity, but also when they get hurt because of another animal, whether it be a dog, whether it be a cat, whether it be, there's a number of natural predators. And so it really, you're right, it's about responsible ownership and a lot of things that have to be considered. She also, the person that was doing the story also noted, are you the vet, or does the vet come out? What impact does this have on animal control? I mean, that's why it has to go through so many committees. It may be worth, Michael, a briefing in public safety, because you probably want law enforcement's input around animal control and code enforcement, and to what that impact might be, so a council could make a full decision. Deputy Mayor Mahoney, it's your second time.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not against this. I really just want to know what the investment in staff time would be. I kind of have a friendly amendment to the motion that we find out, or either we delay this vote and we find out what we're talking about in investment in time. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, would it be reasonable to at least get some kind of estimate before we make this decision at a later meeting?
Yeah, but I wouldn't, that's kind of not a direction I hope we would go, because we'd have to put something aside in order to do the assessment as to whether we could pick it up. So maybe what we do is, if council wants to move this forward to 2022 in a work plan, that could be a function of evaluating the work plan, and we could come back at that point, because you know what I mean? I'm hesitant to allocate, Susan's time or Denise or whoever it is right now to kind of looking at this to determine what would be the commitment of time. That's just, we don't have that luxury. I mean, in all honesty.
I think what you're saying, City Manager Mathias, is it really takes us back to Councilmember Buxton's original input, where she said we should address these with the work plans for 2022. And it looks like we have 3 committees that should consider that. So it seems to me like the thing for the council to do is provide direction to the city clerk to put it on as an item for consideration of environment, public safety, and econ, to look at the urban farms specifically with an eye towards chickens and other animals and square footage, because that seems to be a point of clarity as well that's needed. And then, you know, when they're working on their work plans, the staff will have to look at what's the focus of the city is, what the time is going to take, and the committees will make a decision as to where that ranks on the plan and whether or not they have the capacity to do it. So Councilmember Buxton, you did raise your hand. Did I articulate your thoughts or no?
Well, if there was going to be some effort put forth to determine the amount of time that I would have asked for a separation between animal husbandry and agriculture in general and chicken specifically, because I just admit that even when it comes to the work plan discussion, that if it's 10 hours for the whole subject and 2 hours if we only address chickens only, then I will still advocate for chickens only. Is that clear?
I hear what you're saying. It's a 2022 discussion still for the work plan. So
and that's where I'll go in 2022 as well. So
and I just, one last thing is, you know, we're kind of at times as local government undermined by what logic would dictate. Okay. Like, we don't always get to do this in logical manner. And I think the thing to remember that's important is whether it's chickens or it's a larger realm of animal kingdom or whatever it is, you still got to do the steps that Susan outlined, which is, you know, you got to do the review, you got to come up with the language, you got to do the SEPA, got to send it to Commerce, got to, you know, ask for review, have a public hearing, and then pass the thing. So even though it appears to be a small subject, nothing qualifies relative to, you know, how this all works, especially in land use. Nothing qualifies as simple or direct or easy or any of that, which is incredibly unfortunate, absolutely a hindrance to effective governance. But that's the nature of how things have evolved. So we're stuck with that.
Councilmember Nutting?
I just have one quick comment that as long as this is to consider putting it on the 2022 work plan and to open it up to the whole animal code, I can support this. I think chickens is just one small bite at the apple, or a piece of the pie, however you want to say it. There are other issues underlying, and so I'll support it as long as we take a look at the whole thing.
I feel the same way. I think if, you know, I'm all in favor of putting it on the 2022 work plan. Bucket of consideration in the work plans for environment, public safety, and econ. But I think you ought to look at the whole thing because it's big. And Councilmember Buxton, to your point, at one point you had said, well, if you have 3 chickens, can you still have 3 dogs, or can you only have 1 dog now? How many animals can you put in the square footage? And that's what part of the problem becomes. You can't have a 5,000 square foot urban farm. Well, you might be able to, but I guess it's going to depend on what you have there in there. So I guess my thought is we have the you have to decide, Councilmember Buxton, do you want to include everything or just chickens? And because I'm going to try and get the council to provide direction.
For now, everything. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'll state, and Councilmember Buxton, you have the right to interrupt me if I put this out there wrong. I'm trying to get this right. There is an item on the table for future consideration around urban farms to put it before the committees of Environment, Public Safety, and Econ for 2022 work plan consideration, and to direct the city clerk to include it in the draft development of that. So the committees, once they're chosen, can meet with their respective teams and make that choice. Does that articulate it well?
I would say urban farming animals. Referring to, in other words, this has to do with animals, not just not urban farms. So when you said
okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I'm sorry, thank you. That's why I wanted you to correct me. Okay, and Bonnie's writing this down at this time. So the council that isn't, if the council is in favor of doing this, providing that direction, if please raise your hand if you're in favor of that for the 2022 work plans. Okay, I see all seven. I see Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. So has the city clerk got that? Okay, that one's moving forward. This takes us forward.
Mayor, I have an item to add. It'll be really quick, I promise you.
Well, we're way beyond this point.
I get it. It'll take 5 minutes, I guarantee it. No, really. May I, please?
It's not the type of thing that could wait till our next meeting?
No, there's a time constraint. You'll hear why in 15 seconds.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Council, I've been approached by 3 residents now notifying me that June has become typically considered Pride Month in America. And I have been asked if the city would not put forward a proclamation declaring the month of June to be Pride Month in the city of Des Moines. June is typically considered Pride Month because of a historic event in 1969 at Stonewall, which basically kicked off the modern LGBTQ movement. This language is standardized in many, many cities. It's very straightforward, and I can pass it on for review, but it's just a couple of sentences, and that's what I got.
Okay. June is I know there's also discussions around Juneteenth. City Manager Matthias, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think that what we're trying to do is honor communities who have sought fairness and justice throughout their existence. And I don't know how we go to like Pride Month without doing sort of Juneteenth Pride Month. And what we're looking at, and AJ mentioned this, and we'll bring it back, is we're looking at what would be involved in declaring a holiday on Juneteenth in the city of Des Moines and doing that on an ongoing basis. So I've asked AJ to look at that. I think we'd maybe like to make sure there's a little more thought so that no concern or group looks like there's a predominant concern for their well-being relative to others, and that it be fair and even-handed. Please, Louisa.
I think Councilmember Martinelli had his hand up first.
Well,
Thank you, Councilmember Bangs. Yeah, I just wanted to say I think it's a great idea, and I don't see any reason why we can't have a proclamation for June being Pride Month, and also, one for Juneteenth. I think that we should definitely do both, in my opinion.
Councilmember Bangs?
And that's basically what I was going to say as well. I understand your drift, city manager, but it's not going to be every single little group. This is huge. So I think it's really important to recognize how far and how much further those who are in those categories have to go.
See all hands.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Councilmember Banks. There were a number of hands that came up, so I just wanted to make sure that, please finish your point.
I'm done. That's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Councilmember Nutting.
I'm in favor for it as well, but I believe that in the past we have done something for Pride Month in June, if I recall correctly, and I'm all in favor for Juneteenth. Including everybody in this month is the way I would go with this. So however inclusive we can be.
Deputy Mayor Mahoney?
I support both as well. It's a time we really need to make sure we recognize both events, one as a group of folks and the other as an event that has changed America.
I would be, well, before I make my comment, I'll give it to Councilmember Buxton.
I'm in support of my colleagues. I think I hear a unified voice, and absolutely proclamation, and it looks like possibly an event. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm in favor of both. I think they're separate. I don't want one to overshadow another. There's two recognitions in June, and I want to make sure they both get their appropriate recognition. So because we have consensus here, I will look to the city manager and city clerk to bring us proclamations back in June.
Great. Yes, we will.
Councilmember Harris?
Yeah, may I just say there is a very good language that there's a bill, I believe it's House Resolution 719 at the federal level. It's never gone anywhere, but the language seems appropriate. I will forward that to the clerk. Thank you.
Okay. This is going to move us forward. To board and committee reports. And because Councilmember Martinelli, you did the pledge tonight, you get the first shot.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to state that I'm excited that Governor Inslee has signed House Bill 1477, which would establish the statewide 988 behavioral health crisis response line. It also expands and improves existing crisis call centers, and it requires private plans to provide next day appointments for those experiencing health crises. That was put forth by Representative Orwell, and there were a lot in the community who advocated for that, and I'm really excited to see it get passed. I also want to point out for those who may be struggling that Puget Sound Energy just announced that they were putting forth $27 million for assistance in those who are behind on their power. And then finally, I want to state in response to Councilmember Bangs, I disagree with almost everything you said, and I could go on about that, but I want to apologize for stating that you were angry. I understand you were frustrated. I'm also often frustrated. That's not wording I should have used, and I apologize for that. Those are all my comments for now. Thank you.
Councilmember Bangs.
Thank you, Mayor. I had 2 liaison meetings, Senior Services Advisory Committee. I'll just do the highlights. We have the shredding event that's going on June 8th, 10 to 2. Make sure you go online to see what's accepted, what's not accepted. And the next big thing is that May 18th, the demo happened on the flooring at the activity center, and on May 24th, the install of the new flooring will take place. So we're really excited about that. There may be a soft opening at some point in time for small activities for seniors. That has to be worked through with, of course, directors and city manager. And I attended the Arts Commission meeting, and lots going on there, but primarily we've got the discussion going on between virtual and in-person music events. More to come on that. And then our next virtual music session is May 21st with Warren Dunes. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Nutting.
I have no committee or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended a Reach Out Des Moines meeting, and as the city manager said, things are opening up really fast, and there are a lot of summer programs that will be available for kids, and we want them to have activities. The Seattle Humane Society is going to be organizing trips that you can go and have your kids go and visit critters. Yeti is doing all kinds of stuff with hiking and fishing and biking, learning to ride a bicycle classes. So check that out. And finally, the Des Moines Library is going to open up fairly soon, like within the next couple of weeks, and that's like the go-to place. And I hope that all the parents will recognize that it's back. One quick thing, you were very generous with the time before. I want to tell the judge how much I appreciate the city, the court system going remote. Speaking broadly, I hope, and the city, the truth is, the one silver lining of this pandemic is how much stuff we can do without driving and without flying, okay? Like, 25, 30% of the travel that we do, really we could do remotely if there was the will. And the fact that our city is, taking the initiative there, if only all government organizations could be that proactive, we could actually make a dent in climate change and the noise over our heads and so on. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. On May 10th, I attended a Solving Homelessness with Permanent Supportive Housing Summit, and there were over 200 people on that call. Well, it was a Zoom. Providers, agencies, and electeds. And that was a homelessness week. During that time, I think I attended 3 types of meetings like that. This was my favorite one, and it was extremely well done. I was encouraged by the talk of the philosophical angle from a lot of the presenters that talked about the importance of wraparound services and accountability features to services in this permanent supportive housing role. So I just want to say, in regard to the regional addressing of homelessness, this was the most encouraging messaging that I've seen. So I appreciated that. I also was able to attend a Des Moines Marina Association meeting. Normally I'm not able to, because it happens at the same time as the Public Issues Committee meeting, which is on taking a break this month. So I was particularly impressed by our staff, the staff outreach to this organization. The Des Moines Marine Association isn't an association of the city, but yet 3 staff members, so Scott Wilkins, Katie, Dan Brewer attended this meeting. The city's investment and attention to the boating community through their outreach in attending this organization, I just really appreciated it. The outreach and the communication. So thank you to Michael for allowing the staff attention to this, especially as we move forward in our marina redevelopment. Farmers Market opening day is coming up. Very exciting. They're having a ribbon cutting and a celebration Saturday, June 5th at 9 a.m. Unless that has changed. Somebody let me know if that's changed, but 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. I think Farmers Market is celebrating their 15-year anniversary, if I have it right. So that should be a fun time. And that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. Got to talk about most of my stuff before, but I attended the skateboard meeting where I chair that organization. We got to listen to Bill Ramos. He's the rep from the 5th District, and he talked about funding the transportation projects that are in the state. And honestly, they're getting pushed back a little bit. The strategy of our state is hoping to get a lot of federal dollars to keep us moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to see, but COVID really put a hitch in there. And he talked about things like the new carbon taxes and increases to the gas tax and things like that, and where the funding will go. It was pretty interesting, but it's basically a discussion to have later with more details. I want to thank Michael and the staff for facilitating a meeting with the Destination Des Moines leader. I just, from a personal standpoint, really appreciate hearing the events, seeing if there's ways to work things out, talking frankly on a lot of issues, particularly with COVID concerns, and should something come back up, what can and can't be done, and taking a hint of caution and hesitancy we all want to, but the biggest thing I was very happy about was the efforts from staff, our mayor and Tony Hetler, was that we want to, as soon as we possibly can, in a safe manner, provide activities for our community to come together. And I appreciated that time. And then the transportation meeting, the bulk of it was the quick changes on TIP, which we already talked about, but we got a sound transit update, particularly more details with the closure of 216 over I-5 that's supposed to occur between July 19th and somewhere in the 3rd, maybe 4th week of August. And there'll be notifications and so forth. But I got to compliment Dan Brewer in that particular instance where he negotiated some additional paving on 216th when the job's all done. So very well done, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Okay. I too participated in the Destination Des Moines meeting. I think it's great for the city to come together with DDM and work on what might possibly be able to happen. We are all somewhat, I don't know if I want to use the word confused, but I can say there's been a lot of mixed messages about what the recovery and the reopening might look like from COVID-19. And on the other side, we're hearing about new strains and the vaccines working and all sorts of things. So DDM and the staff really are having some great conversations to find out, what can be done. We also have a number of projects going on, and some of those projects might impact locations where they would do things. So we'll see. But the dialogue is taking place, and I think that's wonderful. Also attended the Transportation Committee. In the Sound Transit update, one date that I think is important, and I'm not sure this date is absolutely cast in stone yet, but there will be a closure between Pack Highway and Military Road on 216th. Beginning July 19th. And the reason being is that Sound Transit has to put a tunnel under that road. And the city has been working with the contractor. The most practical and the safest way to do this, I mean, there would be a closure anyway, but the most practical and safe way to do this is within the confines of what they have negotiated. And that will also help the contractor, appreciating that, has agreed to bring the paving of that all the way down to Pack Highway, therefore completing the 216th paving project. I believe, and I would yield to anyone to correct me, but I think the Department of Transportation is also going to redo that bridge that goes over I-5 there as well. I don't know if it'll be done at the same time. But that was one of the highlights of transportation for me. The Environment Committee, you know, we talked about the poverty-based shellfish protection district, and bottom line is Tyler Beakley made a great presentation. Their status hasn't changed, but they are working on improvements, and I guess that's all I want to say about it right now. Ben Stryker talked about Stormfest, and that's been highly successful at educating youth on things that they can do environmentally. And they cited a couple projects that have happened within Highline schools. They don't believe that they're going to be able to necessarily have an in-person Stormfest again this year, but they will have something, and it is inspiring projects. So I'm happy about that. And then I have one other item, Council, that I do need your input on. It was brought to my attention, and thank you, Deputy Mahoney. I did not see the correspondence when it came in, even though it came into my email bin. Highline College is making us aware that, well, I'll just read part of it. We're writing to share an update from Highline College. In early May, Dr. John Mosby had to spend time in the hospital, including some time in the ICU, due to a health event. We're happy to share that Dr. Mosby continues to heal and is back at home continuing to rest and recover. He will be taking a leave of absence. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge the wonderful relationship that we have with Highline College. And given that, I would like the council to consider sending flowers, you know, and a get well soon card to Dr. Mosby, with funding it from our Hearts and Minds Fund. If you're in favor, okay, I'm just seeing the hands go up. So we've got a 7-0. Our city clerk and communications director, Bonnie, will take care of that. And thank you very much for, you know, considering that, council. That I can't stress enough how important the relationship is with Highline College and how successful it has been. And so with that, that concludes my presiding officer's report, and it takes us to the end of our agenda. Our next meeting is on June 3rd, 2021, and that will be, it's noted as a regular council meeting, correct? Okay. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? I see Jeremy Nutting's council member hand, and I think Louise, Councilmember Bangs, second. Okay. Did I read that correctly? Councilmember Nutting and Bangs, if you nod, okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay, I got it. All those in favor, please raise your right hand until I call your name. Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. We are